Hey guys, Jee Choi here of the House of Black Dragon Study. So let's do the blade review. As you guys watched the intro on the previous clip, probably know what's coming next. Alright, first I want to start with the following. This is Datu Worden's design. It's the Wortac, the latest edition of Wortac by ETE, Edge Technologies Engineering. Now I have to be honest, they're a relatively new company to me because I did not know they even existed until I got this knife. I'm gonna try to get that. Let's just try to focus that here. Okay, there it is. Now I'm gonna be honest with you guys, this is probably one of the best folders I've actually ever had the honor of putting to use. You see that little cutouts on the bottom, the dimplings? As a lot of my students have called it. It's geniusly positioned like how you would cut out certain areas on your handguns for the following reasons: weight reduction and also correct grip placement. These dimplings, if you place it correctly, like using like how I'm gripping right now, this is how I teach my students. The first dimple right under the pivot pin, put your thumb on it, put your third finger right on the edge of the bottom of the clip, and your forefinger right on the last dimple, and then simply put your index finger, your trigger finger, right on the flipper, and it deploys slow. The beauty about this folder is that it is also an assisted opener, and the one that I have is serrated, and it's about 2.9 inches overall in edge cutting length. Now, beauty of that is making it legal for pretty much anywhere in Washington State where I reside. Aside from that factor, I'm going to start with the utilitarian purpose on this first. In case of emergency, if you ever need to break open your windows, if you're submerged in a car after diving over, God forbid, but if shit like that happen, you need to do the following: A, cut your seatbelt. B, you also need to break your window so you can get the fuck out of there. Because if you've ever been in a certain situations where your car is submerged, it is not a pleasant feeling. And not to mention, the worst part is the rapids and the water until they're up to a certain height to actually submerge the vehicle. And also there's enough pressure in the water inside the vehicle, your doors are fucked. It won't open. Even then, if the rapids and also the pretty much how the pressure of the water, which way is flowing, you might not even be able to get your way out of the car through the door trying to open it. So this is where the glass breaker comes really handy, because if you know how to use it before all the shit happens, break the glass, water flushes through, and if you did cut your seatbelt first, you're good to go. Now, how do you cut a seatbelt for yourself? And if you're using this, shit happens, you dove over, you get your blade out, you deploy it, you insert it into your seatbelt and make connection with the serration on the bottom and simply drag it forward. That's it. And you're cutting the seatbelt. Now, if you're having to cut seatbelt for someone who's stuck in a car after trying to get them out but they can't because seatbelt's just locked in, what you do is you never ever put the blade towards the person that you're trying to help. You insert the blade in under the seatbelt like so, put pressure towards you, and starting with the serration, and simply drag that away, downward, like so. Not towards you, because there's a good chance, because of the adrenaline, you might actually cut yourself in the process. So simply drag that away from you and the person you're trying to help, and that's more than suffice to cut the seatbelt away. So that's for the rescue part of this, which is geniusly designed. I'm going to talk about the martial aspects, the fighting aspects of it. So, beauty of this particular folder is it's designed by Datu Worden, who is a living legend in the Filipino martial arts community, if not the martial arts community in the US itself. He was one of the very first pioneers of Filipino martial arts into the mainstream, and he is still actively teaching till this day. Shout out to Datu Worden, much respect, sir. Datu Worden and my teacher, Master Arms James A. Keating, go way back. So because of that, Datu Worden was always just phenomenally awesome in helping us anytime when we needed his travel wrench, which is another self-defense device that's actually legal out. I don't have any in my hands right now. Actually, all mine got pretty much taken by my students, so I probably need to call Datu Worden to actually get some more eventually. But this particular folder is designed by him, and you can see the Filipino aspects of this. And as for the fighting aspect, let's go into that. First, let's say you deploy this without getting this out of your pocket. And this is also, if those of you who haven't seen Kelly McCann's instructional material on how to deploy a folder, I highly recommend you do so, because that's pretty much the method that all my students are preferring when they're deploying this particular blade. And it works like a charm. One, you don't have to shoot the marble, you don't have to do the whole Spidey flip or whatever. All you need to do is, as soon as it locks into your hip, you deploy it like so, and you're good to go if you want to use that method. Now, martial aspect. Let's say you deployed, you've got the blade, and the clip works beautifully. So from here, I simply bring it up, and I got the glass breaker, which also can act as a pain compliance tool. If somebody grabs a hold of my lapel, I just need to put that right on there and simply lock his hand, drag that down. There's a pain compliance lock right there from that position alone. Now, if it's something more severe, let's say for a young lady who's about 4'6", and somebody just grabbed her, all she needs to just grab that and just whack that as hard as she could. She doesn't even have to deploy the folder. Just grab that hard as she could at whatever, any surface of the bone that she could find. One hit, pretty much. If you can still hold on to it, I laugh my head off. You must be high as fuck. But even then, even if you're high, the pain will be pretty much severe enough. If not, from here, if she needs to, she could simply deploy and go to work if need be. So in that aspect, this thing is just beautifully done. Now, fighting aspect of it. I had some of my students ask me, Asifu, what do you think about the serration? Doesn't that get in the way? Not necessarily. There's a utilitarian purpose, as I just demonstrated here. But the beauty of the serration is, if your edge is, paint edge is too short, that might not do the damage. You could also use this as almost as a sawing motion. Or my personal favorite is in the old days, or nowadays with FFS Floro fighting systems, I would do pivot, and what I'll do is I'll pivot right with the serration. That's gonna act as almost like a two-plane weapon. Those of you who don't understand that, contact my teacher, Master Arms James A. Keating. Uncle Jim will be more than happy to explain to you what two-plane weapons are. So if I had to briefly explain that, two-plane weapons are basically tools that, or weapons, that cuts and thrusts on the same line of existence. So typically you would slash or thrust. Two-plane weapons does that in one swoop, such as tomahawks. If you chop something, you're cutting and you're thrusting at the same time. So serration is kind of a similar thing. If you time that right here, like stop it at boom right here, and that would do the trick, especially against attacker. If you deploy your blade and all of a sudden he's stupid enough to actually, I laugh my head off every time when I see this, but they're stupid enough to do the swing. They come at you with a beautiful angle for you to hit. Well, you hit that and support that, hitting whatever is his live weapons coming in from here. That pretty much fucks him up. So either A, it'll be either immediate disarm, or from here, if it's not, his hand's fucked right there, and he will drop that as soon as he tries to move his hand back, because there's no control of his weapon afterwards. From here, boom. You contact whatever you need to. Like I always tell my students, if you're ever deploying this, you have to emphasize with self-defense in mind, meaning ability, opportunity, and jeopardy. And the most important conclusion is how you end the situation. So from here, I would go from this, and I'll keep him at bay. If he persists, meaning if he's still trying to grab a hold of my weapon or my tool with his live hand, I simply pull that, and I got a couple options from here on. I can hinge joint and whack him in the head, on the temple, with the glass breaker, as a nice little incentive to get the fuck away from me while hooking his head and tossing his ass on the ground. Now, if he's still stupid enough, as soon as he sees the point, he's probably not going to want to continue on the fight any further. All this nonsense about gutting the person like to Thy Kingdom Come, that's fucking bullshit in my books, okay? And if you watch any of Kelly's current online like postings, Kelly McCann, shout out, much respect, sir. He's right. You won't even get able to get away with that in current military if you ever pull any shit like that, unless you're doing wet works. That's pretty much the only areas where you might be able to get away with some of the tactics that is being employed by certain schools. But aside from that, no, that's pretty much for civilian application. You do not want to take it any further than A. Oh, he's disarmed. Good. Get the fuck away from me. Oh, you want to grab my hand? That's fucking fine. Alright, dude. You don't want to escalate that any further. That's how simple it should be. If you try to take it any further, like try to gut him up as many times as possible, make him into Swiss cheese, chances are you're going to go to jail because you didn't show any restraint in the matter and just do the ordeal. So, keep that in mind if you ever thinking about deploying this. And as for my thoughts on it, highly recommend it. All the current CTS instructors in the House of Black Genocides all carry one of these as their EDC because it's legal, and I won't mention the price, but it's very affordable, and at the same time it does everything that you need it to. And I've had mine for about a couple months now, and I'll tell you right now, there's no blade play, and I've been deploying this every day to cut just regular normal things, and at the same time super well constructed. My only criticism of this thing is that the pocket is quite sharp, that it does tear into your jeans like you wouldn't believe. So pocket clip might need a little work, but that's about it. Alright, stay tuned for the next review. Like I said, I'll try to do 3 today. So see you soon.